In part 2 of my ProtoThrottle video series, I'm going to show you how to program a Soundtraxx Tsunami2 decoder to work efficiently with the ProtoThrottle. The locomotive that I'm going to program today is my Iowa Northern Railway GP40-2 number 4002. So the reason why I picked this one, most of my locomotives do not have ditch lights. This particular unit does, and I wanted to be able to show you how the ditch light functions work on the ProtoThrottle. One of the things I want to show you real quick, so here for right now I'm going to be using my Digitrax hand throttle. I'm going to hit the headlight here, which is F0. The ditch lights are F5, so you can see that those come on. And you can see when I put it in reverse, they're still directional. So that's going to be one of the things that I'm going to change. When I change directions, the lights change as you change directions of the locomotive. We actually have to reassign that to work efficiently with the two light knobs on the ProtoThrottle. So I'm going to show you how to program this with my Digitrax hand throttle. Originally, I was going to show you this with JMRI, but I know not everybody has JMRI capabilities, so I thought it'd be better to just show everybody using the hand throttle. So I've placed my locomotive 4002 on the programming track. Looking at the instructions that come with your ProtoThrottle, the first two changes that we need to make are to CVs number 3 and 4. These control the acceleration and the deceleration of the locomotive. ProtoThrottle recommends that we set CV3 to a mid to high range and then CV4 to the maximum setting. So to do that on my Digitrax hand throttle, I'm going to hit program. The CV number that we're going to want to change is 3, and we're going to change that. The maximum is 255. I'm going to go 200, so I'm just going to enter 200 into the throttle, hit enter. So it took that command, so I've set CV number 3 to 200. So now I want to change CV4, and I'm going to change that to a maximum of 255. Hit enter. So it accepted that command as well. So the next several CVs that I need to change are actually indexed CVs. So for the Tsunami, in order to access the indexed CVs, I need to change CV number 31 to a value of 16. So again, we'll enter back into the program mode. I'm going to select 31, and we're going to change this to a value of 16. So this actually gets us into the indexed CVs, which is what we need to change the headlights. So for this ProtoThrottle, we're going to actually make the headlights non-directional. And to do that, we're going to assign the front and rear headlights to different function numbers. As it currently comes default out of the package, this locomotive, both the front and rear headlights are function 0, F0. And they're directional. So we're going to disable that and assign the headlight to function 0 and the rear headlight to function 19. So out of the package, the Tsunami2 decoder, the front and rear headlights are set to function 0. For the ProtoThrottle, we need to make both the front and rear headlights independent of one another. So the front headlight is controlled by CV 1.257 and the rear is CV 1.258. But by changing the CV number 31 to a value of 16, it gets us into the indexed menu, so we don't have to actually type in or enter 1.257. So I'm just going to enter. So we're going to find CV 257, and we need to make it a value of 0 because this is going to assign the headlight to F0. So they already accepted that command. So now I can just click up one, CV 258, and for this example we're going to use a value of 19. We're going to assign it function 19. So I'm just going to dial that up hit enter, and it accepted it. So now the headlight is function 0, the tail light is function 19. So by changing the headlight and the rear light to function 0 and 19 respectively, now we have to disable the independent control from one another. Those are controlled by CVs 57 and 58. In order to do that, we need to have the bit levels BL, which is value 2, and HL, which is value 1, both set to on. So if you're confused by what I just said, don't worry. I was a little bit confused the first few times I started messing around with reprogramming CVs as well. So what we're seeing, the top row here is a schematic that came from ProtoThrottle, but it came from Tsunami within the Soundtraxx decoder. So this is what CV57 looks like. It's a row of 8 separate bits. Each bit has a function associated with it. If you have a value of 1, and this is all binary computer code, you're either using 1 or 0. So a function of 1 enables that particular bit, and a function of 2 disables that particular bit. So if we look at this example, so this is going to be CV57 or 58, well, 57 and 58. We actually read these right to left, not like a regular book where you read it left to right. So this is another just little diagram that came with the Tsunami manual. If you want to keep track and actually calculate what your CV value is, you start filling in these numbers if you want them enabled. So we need HL and BL enabled, so we're going to enter 1 into both of those rows. Skipping ahead a little bit, the ditch lights are controlled by F3, FX3, FX4, FX5, FX6. I'm going to get to programming these in a second, but I'm going to go ahead, and all of these need to be enabled as well. So now I have HL enabled, BL enabled, FX 3, 4, 5, and 6 enabled. So to get the unique number for the CV value, each one of these bits has a weight associated with it. So you can see here, here's your bit weight. The bit 8 has a value of 128, 64, 32, so it just keeps dividing it by half. Or if you're reading it right to left, you just multiply by 2. 1 times 2 is 2, 2 times 2 is 4, 4 times 2 is 8, etc., etc. So what you end up doing then, each one of these that has a 1 by it, you start adding these up. So we're going to add 32 plus 16, which is 48, plus 8 is 56, plus 4 is 60, plus 2 is 62, plus 1 is 63. So we'll just go ahead and write 63 down below. That's what I need to program CVs 57 and 58 to have all of these functions enabled. If this scares you, don't be afraid. The nice gentlemen at ProtoThrottle have already done the math for us. I wanted to give you an example, show you how these CV values are actually calculated. So if you're reading the instructions on their website, it will actually tell you to program CVs 57 and 58 to a value of 63, which is what we're going to do next. Okay, so the locomotive is still on the programming track. Re-enter my programming mode, CV. I want CV 57. We're going to set this again to the value we calculated of 63. So we'll go ahead and accept that. And then we'll just click up one. CV 58, same thing. We're going to have a value of 63. Enter that. We're good to go. So now we've just made the front and rear headlights non-directional. Front headlight is function 0. The rear headlight is function 19. So the next thing we need to do are deal with the ditch lights. So again, this particular unit has ditch lights. They're both assigned to function F5. Again, we need to make them independent of one another so we can make the ditch lights turn on with the switches on the ProtoThrottle. The ditch lights are controlled. The front ones are outputs FX3, FX4. The rear ones are FX5 and FX6. Those corresponds to CV 1.259, 1.260, 1.261, and 1.262. So again, since we've already entered the indexed CVs, we'll just re-enter the programming mode. We're going to go to function 259, which is the front ditch lights FX3. We want to keep this at function 5, so we're going to just enter value 5 in there. So it accepted that. We're just going to go right up their list here. CV260, that's FX4. Again, that's still the front headlight, so we need that to be 5. So it accepted that. So let's go up to 261. We need that since we're going to make this function 6, which is unassigned on this particular unit. Go ahead and hit enter, and then 262. We're going to make that function 6 as well. Hit enter, and we're good. So now we just accepted all of those CVs. So now the front ditch lights are non-directional and they'll turn on with function 5. The rears are independent, they'll turn on with function 6. ProtoThrottle provides instructions since there is a switch on the ProtoThrottle to make your headlights dimmable. The instructions they provide essentially say that because of the Tsunami2 decoder, the dimming function by default is function F7. We're going to leave it as function F7. However, there's something with the decoder that you cannot have the rears on bright and the fronts on dim. When you dim either the front or rear, they're both going to be dim. And there's really no easy workaround to that solution. So because of that, which is not a huge deal for me anyway, we're just going to leave it as function F7 and just deal with it that if either the front or rear is dimmable, everything is dimmed. Okay, I've moved my locomotive back out onto the main line here, and we're just going to test things out with my Digitrax throttle before we start configuring the ProtoThrottle. So F0 is the headlight, which came on. So now if I change directions of this locomotive, you can see that the headlight stays on. F5 are the ditch lights. We'll enable those, and actually I still have it in reverse, so I'll go ahead and put that on. F6 will be the rear ditch lights, and then if we go enter the extended functions, F19 will be the rear light. So I apologize, the camera is going to shake here a little bit, but I'm just going to move it to demonstrate that we have the rear light on. It is dim, but there you can see that the rear light is illuminated. And again, I'm going to change directions here so the rear light stays on regardless of the directions in the rear ditch lights. Another thing we'll check here real quick, F7's the dimmer. So you can see the headlights dim. And I'm going to give it some juice here. And you can see that there's a real delayed reaction from the time I enable and disable the throttle before the locomotive picks up speed and then comes to a stop, which is exactly what you need for the ProtoThrottle. So we have now successfully configured this particular locomotive to work with ProtoThrottle. Okay, so now we have to configure the ProtoThrottle to work with locomotive 4002. So the first thing you're going to do is select the locomotive. So you'll hit the menu button. So this is the menu button. This is select. So we're going to select. It was previously set at locomotive 8059. And I'm going to change this to 4002. So I'm going to use my up and down buttons. So 4, hit the menu to toggle over again. 0, 0. Toggle over one more time. 4002, hit the select button and it saves it. So now if you press and hold the menu button, it takes you back to the main screen. So now the next thing we're going to do is we're going to configure the locomotive. So we're going to go into the configuration menu, hit enter. So now this is where you need the sheet that labels all the functions for your locomotive. So for the ProtoThrottle, the horn is F2, which we're not going to change. The bell is F1, which we're not going to change. The brake is F12. I do want to change this because on the Tsunami2, it's actually F11, which in fact I still have disabled. See, I'm talking and touching at the same time. So let's go back to the brake. So let's change that to F11. So these come, the Tsunami2s, the brakes are disabled straight out of the package, and you actually have to enable that. I have not enabled it yet. My understanding of how the ProtoThrottle works is the brake on the throttle is independent from the any kind of CV brakes, so I have left that disabled, but I'm still going to enter it as F11 anyway. Brake off, F11. Auxiliary, F10. So this is your auxiliary button up here. On this particular locomotive, F10 is drive hold, which I want to maintain, or the straight to 8, I should say. It's not drive hold, it's straight to 8. So then let's go to the next one. Engine on is F26, which is correct because that's RPM up. Engine stop is F27, which is RPM down. Again, this is on your function sheet. Throttle unlink, I'm going to leave this blank. Reverse swap, I'm going to leave this blank. So here we go. Now we have to go through and program the last part of our headlights. So the instructions provided by ProtoThrottle on their webpage, the front headlight needs to be F0, the front ditch light needs to be F5, front dim 1 actually needs to be F0, front dim 2 needs to be F7, the rear headlight is function 19, which is correct. Rear ditch light is F6, which is correct. The rear dim is going to be F19. And then the rear dim is going to be F7. Hit that one more time. So now I can program my up button and my down button. So currently right now, looking at my decoder sheet, I want the up button to be the couple uncouple, which is F13. So let's change that to F13. The down button, I'm going to make this be, let's see, how about the handbrake, which is F15. So let's go ahead and change that to F15. So then now we've gone completely through the function menu. Now I can hit select, it saves, and now this is actually back to, so the ProtoThrottle is programmed for this particular locomotive. So I'm going to go back to the menu, and then if you go to save configuration, we're going to save this to locomotive 4002. So now at any point I can go back and load configuration, which is 4002, and I save that into the first slot. So if you have a different decoder, different functions, you can actually save the locomotive number with those particular configuration settings, so then you don't have to go through and change everything again. Okay, so now I have the locomotive running. I've got my ProtoThrottle running. Since I can only show you one at a time here, let's go ahead and crank up the dim. So you can see the front headlight came on dim. Bright. You can see it change back to bright. Ditch lights. We've got ditch lights. So the cool thing about this particular locomotive, it's pre-programmed when you hit the horn, you can see that the ditch lights alternate. That is prototypical. I live near Iowa Northern Yard. I see this locomotive all the time. This is a prototypical feature. So real quick, just to show you a couple things, here's your reverser handle, here's your brake handle, here is your throttle handle. If you remember, I set my auxiliary button to straight to 8, so let's go hit that. Give it a little bit of throttle. You can hear it wind up straight to 8. Disengage that. So let's go ahead and hit reverse here. We'll put it into notch 1. So now I'm going to put it back to idle, and you can see that it still has pretty decent momentum, but if you need to, you can bring the brake over and bring the locomotive to a stop. Here you can see one more. Here's the rear view. The rear headlight and ditch lights are on. Give it just a little bit of throttle here. In reverse, the ditch lights do not alternate like they do in a forward direction. And just to check out the other functions here, the top button was the coupler clank, bottom button was the hand ratchet, you can hear. That concludes this part 2 video on configuring a Tsunami Soundtraxx decoder for use with the ProtoThrottle. Part 3 will consist of additional configurations of a loc sound decoder, which is really what I want to program because I have a fleet of EMD rebuild GP10s. And that's the whole purpose of having the ProtoThrottle, to run those old GP10s, because it will be a pretty prototypical experience. But they are loc sound decoders. I will be using a loc programmer for that. I found it's just too difficult to program the loc sound with my Digitrax hand throttle. So we'll be doing that. We'll go in some additional configurations with the ProtoThrottle in their submenus on altering speed steps and things of that nature. So I hope you found this video to be very informative. If you have any questions, please do not hesitate to comment in the sections, and I will answer your questions as best I can. Also, I've put into the description of this video several links for the information that I used as references to program this. I would also encourage you to play around with it. I know already that I'm going to make a few adjustments because I think there should be more of a delay from the time I enable the throttle until the locomotive kicks in. But at least I'm in the ballpark. I have it operational. We'll make some tweaks. I'll report back. But until then, happy railroading.